My name is Stephen, USSR Robinson, and thank you for watching Sporting Icons.
So I thought we'd do a little bit of fantasy matchmaking. Of course, you all put yours in the comment section below. And on this one, I'm just talking about heavyweights, domestic. They don't have to be British, but they at least have to train here, live here, for example, okay? And I've just gone through a bunch of fights that I would like to see. Pretty much all of them should be in the second half of the year. And of course, certain things will have to happen in order for these particular fights to make sense at the time. But anyway, these are fights that I personally would like to see. Of course, we're already going to get Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, huge domestic fight, of course. But anyway, other fights I'd like to see in the second half of this year at some point would be Dillian Whyte versus Joyce. Again, this will be highly dependent on the result of Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin and Joyce versus Alexander Usyk. So if Dillian Whyte wins, Joyce wins, then we're looking at Dillian Whyte, the WBC interim World Heavyweight Champion. Then you've got Joyce, the WBO interim World Heavyweight Champion. Potentially, of course, the winner of Anthony Joshua Tyson Fury after their first fight is completed. If Joyce was to beat Usyk, he will then be elevated to full WBO World Heavyweight Champion. So, of course, then we'll have Dillian Whyte and Joyce fighting for a world title. But if both of these guys lose, I think they should fight each other. Anyway, if one wins and the other one loses, obviously not. Okay? Anyway, I hope that makes sense. Other heavyweight fights that I'd like to see, Hughie Fury versus Martin Piccolo. Now, I'd love to see it next. But I think in order to make this fight a little bit more spicy, I think Martin Piccolo should fight somebody soon. Hughie Fury should fight somebody soon. And in the second half of the year, we see Hughie Fury versus Martin Piccolo. But I'm not against it happening right now, just to put that out there, okay? I think that would be a very, very interesting fight, that is for sure. Dereck Chisora, I'd like to see him take on Daniel Dubois. This will be a case of Dereck Chisora, either it's time to hang up your gloves now, and Dan Dubois bounces back with a huge victory. Again, this is second half of the year, probably towards the end of the year, because I'd like to see Dan Dubois have at least 2 fights before he fights somebody like a Chisora, for example. But I think towards the end of the year, I'd like to see Dereck Chisora take on Dan Dubois. So this would be a fight that I think that Dan Dubois will show us that, you know what, I lost, I'm bouncing back. I've got a good victory on my resume now. Now we're moving forward into 2022. Let's talk about the bigger fights. For Dereck Chisora, this would be a case of either he hangs up his gloves after this one, or if he beats down Dubois, let's have one more crack at gunning for a world title. Hope that makes sense. I'd like to see my very good friend in Stephen USSR Robinson take on Dorian Krass Maru. For those of you who don't know Krass Maru, he's a Ukrainian fighter, but he's based here in the UK. In fact, he's been down Dubois' sparring partner for quite some time, one of his main sparring partners. They're both 3-0. That'd be a very, very interesting fight. Both of them are very tall, heavy-handed, of course. I'm going to favour Steve Robinson in that fight. Of course I will. And I think that he just gets him out there spectacularly. But Dorian Krass Maru, of what we've seen, looks pretty good. So at a minimum, at a bare minimum, he'll be giving Stephen Robinson a lot of rounds, a lot of things to think about. That's for sure. And I think a victory over Krass Maru will then get him talking about taking on the likes of a Fabio Wardley or a Dan Dubois, these kind of guys, going into 2022. But again, I'd like to see Steve Robinson and Dorian Krass Maru get 2 or 3 wins, and then these guys fight literally towards the end of the year. I'm talking November, December kind of time. I'd like to see Fabio Wardley take on Nick Webb. Nick Webb, of course, he won the Ultimate Boxer tournament, so that was a great achievement for him. Fabio Wardley, again, he's got a fight coming up with Eric Molina as well. So I think in the second half of this year, early second half of the year, I'd like to see Fabio Wardley versus Nick Webb. I think Nick Webb needs to have a comeback fight first, because he hasn't fought for quite some time, and then set up this kind of fight. David Price versus Nathan Gorman. Again, no real reason why this fight couldn't happen next from one perspective, but I do think both of these guys do need another confidence boosting win to make this one a little bit more spicy. Again, this will be a crossroads fight. David Price, if he was to lose to Nathan Gorman, time to hang up your gloves, I think. If Nathan Gorman loses, he needs to go back to the drawing board and really start again, because that's a lot a loss to David Price wouldn't be the end of Nathan Gorman, but it would certainly make a lot of people go, you need to really have a look at what's going on. You really do. Okay, but he's young enough to bounce back, that's for sure. But either way, I'd like to see David Price versus Nathan Gorman. David Adelaide, very good fighter. I think was he 4 or maybe 5, I know, at the minute. And I'd like to see him take on Cash Ali. I haven't really seen Cash Ali for quite some time. I used to speak with him quite a bit on like a text message and WhatsApp and that. I haven't spoken to him in a while. I hope he's all right. But I'd like to see that fight again. If David Adelaide wants to push on and put his names in with the likes of Daniel Dubois and all these kind of guys, then a victory over a Cash Ali is something to talk about. Likewise, if Cash Ali was to get a victory over David Adelaide, again, we're talking about a Cash Ali versus a Nathan Gorman or the Stephen Robinson versus Krass kind of winner. Again, hope that makes sense. Nayla Bull against George Fox. George Fox is currently undefeated, 3-0. Nayla Bull, he does have one blemish on his resume, a loss where he lost to Sokolowski, but a lot of people have been losing to Sokolowski. He's a journeyman on paper, but in the ring, not really. Okay, I think a lot of fighters overlook Sokolowski, and I think that's what happened with Nayla Bull. But again, he needs a couple of wins to get back into the swing of things. And then we'll see him take on a George Fox. Again, much like the other fights that I've spoken about, the winner of this fight can then start talking about other fights. Stephen Robinson, Doran Krass, Fabio Wardley, for example, and Daniel Dubois, for example. For me, I'd like to see this fight. And of course, I'd like to see Johnny Fisher, currently 1-0, take on a Simon Vallily. Again, second half of the year, I think Johnny Fisher needs another couple of quick fire fights. I think Simon Vallily, he needs a fight or two as well just to get back into it. Then we'll see. Is Johnny Fisher about that life, shall we say? Much like when Fabio Wardley defeated Simon Vallily. It was a bit of an announcement, of course, it was for the English title. So maybe Johnny Fisher could do the same thing by getting a win over Simon Vallily. Again, that will show that he's about it. Simon Vallily, him defeating a prospect in Johnny Fisher, will get people talking about him again. Anyway, these are the domestic fights that I would like to see in the heavyweight division. Maybe they can be jigged around a little bit for sure, but hopefully I've given you a little bit of method to the madness as to why I want to see these particular fights. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, catch you on the next video.